Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again in this YouTube astrological segment. I'm going to be talking about astrology and the Monterey Park shooting that has taken place recently. Some of you may have heard there was a mass shooting that took place in Monterey Park, California. It occurred yesterday. Um, Around 10:15 p.m. I'm using that as somewhat speculative approximate time because a report I saw online said it was that police had responded to the scene to the incident about 10:22 p.m. their time. So I put an approximate time as the shooting at 10:15 p.m. And first off, naturally, I want to offer my condolences and prayers to the close friends and family members of the victims. There are at least 10 people that were killed as a result of this shooting, and at least 10 injured, wounded people. And again, I've spoken about this in previous videos I've done on these shootings, and that it just seems like this violence. We've had such a proliferation of violence in the United States. It's not even funny. It's really become very sad, and in more ways than one. And I could understand why there's some people out there that have had some apprehension and reluctance in even coming to the U.S. sadly. But again, I do offer my prayers and condolences to the close friends and family members of these victims. I'm going to talk about, the event chart of this incident, and how it may have correlated with what transpired here. And the first thing I know is, looking at the sun, moon, and ascendant. The ascendant is in Libra of this event. Sun is in Aquarius and the moon is in Aquarius. They were celebrating at this ballroom. I guess it was like the Lunar New Year. I'm thinking it probably has to do with the fact that this is the first, I believe the first new moon of this year. Moon being in Aquarius, the sign is very unpredictable, bizarre, unusual, spontaneous. You have, the ascendant being in Libra would seem kind of odd on the surface because Libra is about, peace and balance and tranquility, reconciliation, and negotiation, things that are refined. At the event, before this actually happened, this was a place where you had obviously a lot of socializing. I say the ascendant, of an event chart being the face of the event, and having Libra there, maybe this was something where somebody was just either trying to balance things out in his or her mind, whoever did this shooting. Sadly, and that was his maybe some kind of reasoning as to why this happened, or it could simply be that this event was going to be one where where people would be able to collaborate and help each other out as a result of this, and working together. I think that could have something to do with Libra being on that ascendant. This could be also a thing of work justice that somebody feels they have in their mind, in terms of what why they did this. And you also have Jupiter being in Aries, and Jupiter is in this event. It is a singleton planet. It's the only planet in fire in Jupiter. As I've talked about before, is strongly benign and benevolent, but it's paradoxical. It could also have a tendency to enlarge and expand, and it can enlarge truculence, volatile behavior. And Jupiter is also about philosophy and belief, and the belief at this time, could have just been tied into just being very volatile and violent. And Aries is associated with volatility and gunfire, and Jupiter can enlarge that. And going back to the sun moon ascendant combination, having the moon being in Aquarius, we'll go to the sun being in Aquarius, the focus on really just unpredictability, just something something bizarre, It's a focus on the unusual, something that happens spontaneously, unpredictably, unexpectedly. And the moon, being an Aquarius, the emotions at this time were probably, very erratic and sporadic, to say the least. And the thing is, you talk about, this event. I mean, the full moon this was a new moon. The full moon is associated with more that loony type behavior, often more crazed, very, wild, uninhibited behavior more. But I'm thinking, with the moon being in Aquarius, I know it's a new moon. I think you had, the strong Aquarius energy in general at this event. You have the sun, moon, Venus, and Saturn all being in Aquarius. It shows a lot of that bizarre, unusual, unpredictable behavior and very rebellious behavior. The sun in Aquarius could also be the focus on, being non-conforming, rebellious, and you have the moon in there, which is really, you're talking about, the emotions, again, the emotions being very, unpredictable. Um, the very in the emotions being somewhat sporadic and erratic at this time. You have another thing is that you have, looking at this chart as well, you have all of the planets are on the right side of the chart, which is really, speaking of unusual, I would say that would be unusual whether you're talking about a natal chart or event chart or what have you. And when you have, it's not just a preponderance of planets on the right side of the chart, all of them are on there. This is on the positive end. This could emphasize and accentuate responsiveness to others, but at the same time, it can show a lot of dependence, that people needed others more at this time, more so than usual, really, in terms of getting the assistance and help, but at the same time being there for one another at this time. And the thing is, the cops, I believe, likely did expedite. They did get there fairly quickly after the shooting had taken place, and responded very quickly. You have most of the planets. Also, they fall in that second quadrant, which consists of houses 4, 5, and 6. Which shows that's an emphasis on family. Fourth house is also emotional security, family. Fifth house, children. Sixth house can be connected with worry, and also but being of service as well, being helpful. So this is where a lot of that focus was at the time at this event, based on the event chart, because you have eight of the 10 planets are in that second quadrant. That's a very strong majority of planets to be in one quadrant in the chart. And going back, and in this chart itself, with the planets, the end planets are Mercury and Mars in this in this grouping of planets, and they form an inconjunct aspect with each other. Now, inconjuncts in astrology, it can often be about adjustments. It could be too much or too little of something. You have Mercury and Capricorn making an inconjunct to Mars and Gemini. And Mars, of course, is associated with violence. Mercury is about thinking. Mercury is in discipline, Capricorn. It tells me there was really, more, obviously much more about being violence than, being volatile, as opposed to actually thinking. Mercury in Capricorn, though, can indicate that this was a very, premeditated and planned type of event. It falls, it's very close to the fourth house cusp, actually, in the fourth house of emotional security, in end of life. You have 4 planets in the fourth house of end of life, and you have Uranus in the north node in the 8th house of death. Another thing is, having, Aries on the descendant can indicate that the open adversary the shooter is one that was exceptionally volatile and violent, more so than most, I would say. Hold on a moment, people. Sorry about that, I'm back. But anyway, and an aspect to take note of, another one, is the fact that Mercury in Capricorn is square Jupiter in Aries. And when you have the square, that Mercury square Jupiter by itself can indicate being over optimistic. And you have I would say the shooter may have been that at this time, and in doing so maybe thinking that he or she could get away with this without being apprehended or caught. Jupiter is in enthusiastic Aries, in hurried Aries as well, and you have that square going to Mercury. The thing about this too is looking at this event chart, some other things I wanted to point out. Well, one thing that I did I see as well, what's interesting, you have a stellium involving Pluto in Capricorn, the Sun in Aquarius, and the Moon in Aquarius. Now, some people have different interpretation of a stellium. I see a stellium as a series of conjunctions that involve at least 3 planets. Pluto is the first planet, again, the Sun the second, the Moon the third. It basically, the energy in the stellium could be very integrated, and what starts out with the first planet basically concludes with the final one, basically forms an astrological statement. Pluto, of course, is the planet of death, but it's also about mass destruction. You have this was obviously a mass shooting. And then it's followed by the Sun, which puts more focus on it, puts more attention on it. Sun is also about life. And, this obviously the ending, the obliteration of life, sadly. And then the Moon, was connected, with the emotions and the, really in the public as well. And this was an event also, oddly enough, that was basically honoring, this lunar that Lunar New Year. I believe it was I don't know this for a fact, but I believe it's probably because the moon, this was the first new moon of 2023 in Aquarius, and really the thing about this too is the moon again is connected with the public, so the ending of that stellium being something that was public related, it's not surprising, and something that caused a lot of really erratic, unpredictable type of emotional energy. And the thing about this too, I notice in this chart, is that you also, you have Venus in Aquarius conjunct Saturn in Aquarius, and the Saturn-Venus conjunction, I would say by itself could manifest in some inhibitions or restrictions in love and in expressing that. And you have Saturn in Aquarius, could indicate difficulties with society, maybe friendships. I'm wondering if this had something to do with the perpetrator committing this crime. And the thing about this as well, I noticed, I thought it was interesting that Mars is in Gemini, because Mars, there was and I saw this on one blog, and I don't know if this was with the Monterey Park shooting, because there's a shooting that took place shortly after this, and I don't know if there's a correlation between one and the other, but having with Mars and Gemini, somebody had apparently wrestled the weapon out of one of the shooter's hands, and I don't remember if it was the Monterey Park shooting or the one that followed it, But it's interesting because Mars can be about actions, and Gemini is quick-witted energy, and it's also the hands. So it's not surprising you had a moment where somebody was able to use that energy, that actions that were connected with being quick-witted, being quick-thinking, and being able to work the gun out of the perpetrator's hand. And I thought that's something that is telling. You also have something else. I'm looking at it. I'm wondering if there were any children that were killed, because you have, you have the ruler of the fourth house of end of life, which is Saturn. Capricorn falls on the fourth house cusp in this event chart. The ruler of that fourth house of end of life falls in the fifth house of children. And another thing as well, the ruler of the eighth house, which is Venus. Taurus falls on the eighth house cusp in this event chart, and the ruler of Venus falls in the fifth house as well, and that's the house of children. So I wouldn't be surprised if there was at least one child maybe that would that might have passed away, and this is just terrible that something like this would actually happen. And I'll say one thing, not having any planets in that first quadrant, the one thing I would say is positive is that you likely had less egocentric and self-centered energy in this event, that you had people that were willing to come together and collaborate and do what they can to really to stop this person, be able to make the moves necessary to protect others, and to make sure that this person do whatever they can to prevent this person from hurting other people. And this is so really not much more for me to add on this than that. The thing about this though is the fact that you don't have really no overabundance of water energy in the chart. The only planet that's in water in this event chart is Neptune. Neptune being in Pisces, and it's a singleton planet, which naturally, as many of you may know, a singleton planet can stand out more in the chart, and Neptune is about chaos and confusion, and it's also associated with drugs and alcohol. And this is this is something where obviously this wasn't something that occurred that did cause a lot of that chaos and confusion, and it falls in the sixth house of worry and apprehension. So this is something that I just want to close basically on this, that just to reiterate what I've said in other videos, on comparable, subject matter with this, doing astrology, doing videos on, the event charts of shootings, and it's just what questions, what is going to happen, what can actually be done to basically to do everything at least but eradicate these kind of shootings. What is actually going to happen? Is this thing just going to keep escalating, or we're just going to have these things going on indefinitely? Astrologically, Chiron, being in Aries, and it's going to be in Aries for some time to come. Chiron does stay in Aries for a number of years. It's I don't believe Chiron is an even transit. What I'm saying is I don't believe it stays in the same sign for every sign for the same amount of years. And the transit of Chiron and Aries is going to be here for some time to come. So I would imagine that during that time, these things are wound, suffering, physical related actions, physical suffering, due to gunfire is going to be more prevalent. Chiron, is connected, of course, with physical and emotional suffering, and you have a lot of obviously physical suffering as a result of volatile actions, gunfire, and that's what Aries is associated with. So, And Chiron in Aries is also about suffering. I'd say with identity, could be as one's identity as well, in their place in the world. And you have a lot of people, that don't really, understand, their place in the world, in society. You have Saturn still in Aquarius again, which can indicate, how it's affecting people in a generational sense. That people feel, there's a lot of people that might feel more restricted in society, that might feel ostracized by society. And I'm wondering if this has something to do, with some of these shootings that take place. And it's people that, they're taking their frustrations out, because they haven't really found themselves um, in the world. They don't feel welcome in the world, and they're taking it out by, maybe by shooting others. I know there's different reasons for mass shootings. You have some people that are just very nefarious and evil, and might have some animosity or hatred towards certain groups. I know that has, to do, some of these shootings. You might have people that might be discriminating against a certain type, that are adversarial toward, a certain group, whether it could be a religion, an ethnicity, or what have you. But it's just terrible, and I just hope that this isn't something that's going to be a continuing trend and keep escalating. Anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment. Until next time, Edwin Learnard saying stay well.